As humans, we all have people we look up to in our lives. People who we admire and respect, who have helped mold us into the person we are today. No matter who comes to mind when I say the word hero, the reasons behind our choices are the same. And today I would like to speak to you a little bit about my hero. He was a man who was dedicated, determined, and had a heart of pure gold. He loved his family, loved his God, and was the best example of a man that I can think of. Edwin Leroy Rice, better known to me as Granddad, is a man whom I owe a lot to, and someone that I can honestly say was a blessing to know. Even though he is no longer physically with us, the memories and effects he had on my life will stick with me forever. My grandfather was born in 1930s to a very poor farm couple in what is now modern-day Hendersonville, Tennessee. From a very young age, he learned hard work and discipline by working on the family farm. He went to grade school and high school where he graduated with honors, and shortly after began working at a printing press company known as Baird Ward Graphics. Also after graduation, he enlisted in the military and would later be drafted in 1950 during the Korean War. He proudly served his country for 4 years and then returned to the States to settle back down. My grandmother, Lillian Rice, waited on him to return, and they were married shortly after. They had 2 sons, Johnny and Joey, whom he loved and raised into fine gentlemen. He was a very loving and caring father and grandfather throughout his entire life. Now that I have told you a little backstory on where my grandfather came from, I would like to show you just how great of a man he truly was. First off, I mentioned that my grandfather was a dedicated man. He was dedicated to his family and always did what he had to provide for them. He worked at Baird Ward Graphics for 40 years, where he worked his way up to his supervisor until he finally retired at the age of 65 with full benefits. He was also dedicated to his church and his God. He was a member and deacon of the Goulsville Church of Christ here in Nashville for over 30 years. He was very well respected and liked throughout the community and church, but somehow always maintained this sense of humility about him. He was also dedicated to his friends and his colleagues. My grandfather was the type of person that people knew they could call him whether it be 12 in the afternoon or 2 in the middle of the night, and if they needed help, he would show up without a question, and that is something that I really admired about him. I also mentioned that my grandfather was a very determined man. He was determined in making sure that his friends and family were always cared for. I can remember being small and watching him give people the food off of his plate or the literal coat off of his back. He also made sure that his grandkids were provided for. My sister and I were the only 2 grandkids that him and my grandmother had. But thanks to them, we went to private school throughout our grade school and high school years, never missed a class trip, and never had to beg too hard for that toy that we wanted that we knew our mom and dad would never let us have. We may have been just a tad what you call spoiled, but we were always grateful for what we had. For the first 5 or 6 years of my life, actually, my sister and I stayed with my grandparents on an everyday basis. Our parents worked very long and hard hours, so my grandfather and grandmother would babysit us and feed us dinner until they got off in the evening. I can remember some of the best memories and laughs I had with them up there, and I will carry these with me until the day that I die. Last but not least, my grandfather had a heart of pure gold. To be honest, I really don't even need to give examples to this segment of the speech, because if you've been listening in the slightest bit, I've mentioned so many examples of his selflessness and love. You could truly see and feel the love whenever he smiled or laughed. It didn't matter if you were a stranger that walked up to him on the street or somebody that he had known his entire life. He treated everyone with the same respect and common courtesy, and I really admired that about him. To this day, I still strive to do that by showing kindness and caringness toward anybody that I see. I can hear him telling me, "You have no idea what a person is dealing with on the inside. Outside, they may be all smiles, but on the inside, it may tell a very different story." And that has still stuck with me to this day. Some may have thought of my grandfather as just a normal man, but to me, he was extraordinary. He was the greatest example of a person to look up to that I can imagine, and I strive to be like him on an everyday basis. If I can only be half the man that he was by the time that I get old and gray, I will consider that a great accomplishment. Thank you.